We want to take a moment to give our condolences to the family and friends of the iconic artist Tim Sales, who passed away this week. From his work on Wolverine, Gambit, and Spider-Man Blue to one of the most influential works of the last 3 decades, Batman: The Long Halloween, Tim created defining moments forever in our memories, and we thank him for the stories that he shared with us.
Welcome to episode 22 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men the Animated Series weekly recap podcast. This is part 2 of Reunion. We went a little over on this one, so we just split into 2 parts, and we love Wally, so you get to have Wally for 2 weeks now.
And here we go.
So they find the jet, and Rogue decides to start trying to like break into it, and she freaks out a little bit because she can't use her powers to like break it open. Then Gambit is like, well, let me do it. He can't charge his card.
He did that classic, first you charge the card,
Yeah.
and then he stops. And it doesn't charge. And he freaks out.
Because he's like, I don't know how to finish this sentence.
He doesn't, like, first of all, he sees the love of his life not being able to use her powers and freaking out about it.
Yeah.
But he's like, nah, I'll show you how you use your powers. And then as soon as he doesn't realize his powers on his little playing card, he freaks out worse than she did. It's adorable.
Everybody's powers are gone. But the thing that stood out to all of us in our notes, and Wally's headcanon, because Wally did not bring notes because he's a guest, nor should he have to bring notes. So Cyclops takes off his glasses.
We see his eyes.
Yeah, we see his eyes. Beast, still blue.
Not just blue, equally as muscly.
Jacked blue.
Does jumpy and acrobatic-y things.
At one point, he breaks like a pipe or something, or not pipe because they're not there, like an iron bar or something like that, you know? Like,
I would have loved it to see Beast revert back to human form. So this would have been like the blessing for Beast. He's like, oh my God, I'm a person again. That doesn't happen.
None of that. You would expect that to happen. That's a very X-Men thing to happen. However, I can buy the logic that because it's a secondary mutation, the blue thing, that he causes himself, that's more of like a scar than a mutation, a power. So then what defines his power?
Yeah.
Is it like he's just clumsy now? He's just like, if he tried to do acrobatics, he just wouldn't do it? I spent a lot of this episode watching Beast to see if there was any obvious lack of power moment. And not only there isn't there's another beat later on that we'll get to that I think almost confirms, I don't think Beast is a mutant.
yeah. Or he grew out of it.
I think he's just like was naturally athletically stacked and really smart, and then messed himself up even more with his secondary thing.
That is a sadder story.
It really is.
Cosmic rays.
Yeah. It's radiation. This is the Marvel answer. So
The Nasty Boys and the Mutates attack.
And Ruckus takes them all up pretty quick. Everybody gets caught.
Like I said, your favorite is Ruckus. You love Ruckus.
And
sorry, I do have to interject one piece. If you look at their first appearance in the start of the season, and then look at their appearance this one, the accents for Hairbag and Ruckus, they were toned down a bit. Okay. Like that was one of the things I noticed in their initial debuts is they had like very heavy accents. Like Hairbag was like a Jamaican-esque accent. Ruckus was like a European vibe to it. They were a little more just tamed English speaking voices.
Some people wrote into the studio.
Especially Ruckus. There's actually a really sweet moment that he has with Mr. Sinister where they're just like talking about their plans, and he like looks back and he's like, yeah,
they're gonna run away together.
Yeah. I really connected with Ruckus in that moment.
After this, it'll just be me and you. Anyway.
But then we get the great Wolverine moment, which we all are big fans of, where Wolverine pops his claws and it's like, oh shit, this is hurt for forever, and I don't know that.
Yeah.
That is my favorite bit of all of this fight scene, is that they put in a grimace. Like, because it shows that level of detail of what they know about these characters, that logically, yes, there's nothing mutant about these things, as Wolverine says in this episode, but what allows him to do that is his healing ability, because these are metal knives popping out of his knuckles. And they didn't do a big deal about it. And he later pops him out without it being that kind of a thing, and it's fine. But the fact that they put that in here at the first time he did that just was a beautiful part of that layered, textured respect for the source material that I think is the defining feature of this series.
It kind of implies that if he spent like extended time without his powers, he would like kind of die of toxicity, right? Because he has all the adamantium in his bones.
I'm pretty sure that became a story at one point. There was adamantium poisoning when his healing factor got reduced.
And that's kind of what happened in Logan, right? Like he's kind of getting worn down over time, and so it's like just a general unhealthiness and stuff.
Yes.
Dude is also old as fuck by the time of Logan too.
So the fight happens. Vertigo takes out Wolverine, but he still manages to get away.
By get away, you mean he falls off a cliff?
He got away.
There's one moment where he like is jumping off of a cliff or whatever, and he just does like a cannonball thing where he like curls into a ball and rolls Sonic style. I always love that, and also I love that also makes sense. Unlike the Beast thing, like Wolverine's body is a machine too, and so like the only thing that he would get tired quicker. And again, I think that's something that is hinted at in this episode.
Also drunker quicker.
Oh God, yeah. If there was a bar here, like we would see sloshy Logan like you wouldn't believe.
So the rest of the X-Men do get captured and taken away. We follow Wolverine because the Sky Riders have gone after him. He's running through the forest. He loses them, but he confronts... These guys are going to correct me on the real names, but I have that he confronts a T-Rex and tries to put him in a headlock, which is hilarious.
So most people would probably today call it a raptor because raptors in Jurassic Park are not actually raptors. It looks like was closest to a Deinonychus, which is the one that had like the little tappy claw. So...
And then a bigger T-Rex chases it away.
Which I would just concede is probably the T-Rex. Yes.
Ka-zar finds Wolverine. They argue and fight because Ka-zar thinks that Wolverine's one of the mutates that's with Sinister and everything.
And Wally, did you pick up on the reference that only you or I would care about and Rod wouldn't? With what Wolverine calls Ka-zar?
No.
He calls him Nature Boy. Which...
Like a David Bowie thing.
God damn it, Rod. Get out.
That is absolutely on point because Ka-zar is... basically drawn like a professional wrestler. Imagine Tarzan, but instead of in the jungle, it's in the Savage Land. That's what Ka-zar is.
And he has, like, instead of the stereotypical dark brown hair, he has the blonde that Ric Flair freaking has.
Absolutely. And he has about as much intelligence as Ric Flair as well. Ric Flair would call a Triceratops a three-horn.
I might have had a Ric Flair action figure as a kid. That's the extent of my knowledge.
But as they start fighting, it ends up being Zabu who takes down Wolverine.
They argue and they figure out that they're on the same side. Like Wolverine's like, I want to kill Sinister too. I don't work for that guy. So they decide to head to the Citadel, but they get attacked by more Sky Riders, and Ka-zar starts taking them out, and they hijack.
They carjacked. They carjacked a Sky Rider.
It was exactly like what you would do in GTA. So there's three of them.
Yeah.
Wolverine cuts the like saddle off one of them and he falls off. So that gets rid of one of them. Then
so that pterodon is finally free to go away. He's like, fuck this.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my God, what is this? I've never not had someone on my back. This is incredible. So that pterodon is living its best life now. Ka-zar, GTA press X, pulls guy out of front seat of car, jumps on to the other pterodon, and then so you think, okay, you got rid of one away forever, and then one got carjacked. You have two heroes. We're gonna go knock this other guy off, this other pterodon, and then we'll have two pterodons for Wolverine and for Ka-zar. No, they decide to also knock this guy off the thing or whatever. But again, another pterodon that's free to go on its own way, and so
one still captive.
It still has the saddle on, so it does not know the sweet, cool breath of the air on the back of it where the saddle lives.
My headcanon is Ka-zar is like no longer like in the presence of his wife, so he expressed his crush for Wolverine. That's why he like only got the one.
I'm just saying there were 3 air riders, there were 2 of them.
Yeah.
There was an opportunity for them to get 2 of them. There wasn't.
Actually, they should have kept 3, so Zabu could have had one.
Yeah, that's the action figure I want, is a saber-tooth tiger riding a pterodactyl.
That's a really good action figure.
It's what we deserve. It's not what we're gonna get.
I'm pretty sure we don't deserve it.
But yeah, I was so confident in the setup because of the three of them and stuff that I started pre-writing notes like, oh, they end up taking these pterodactyls over and stuff. And then I saw like, oh, they're going to both ride on. Okay, backspace. And like, so anyway, ka-zar has a crush on Wolverine. And Wolverine calls it a leather chicken. And and ka-zar breaks to Zabu.
You found that funnier than any child in the 1990s would.
Now, even myself in the 90s, I found it funnier now as an adult than I did as a kid. Then ka-zar breaks to Zabu that he can't go. And so
which is really messed up to me because as we have established, Zabu is the smartest person in the entirety of the Savage Land at this point.
And he even says
smartest entity, not person.
He even says like if we don't return, like avenge our death. So Zabu's clearly like very sentient.
When this happens, when Wolverine, saddles up behind ka-zar, and for those just listening, not the three of us in a room, he's like getting in that position when you got a nice young lady and you get on a motorcycle and you want her to kind of grab you from behind. That's what Wolverine is doing with a shirtless ka-zar. And then something happens in his head and his eyes. It's not animated, but you can tell. And so he looks at Zabu and he says, "You must stay here and avenge us if we die." And you can tell, in that episode of Simpsons where Lisa breaks Ralph's heart and Bart's just sitting there with the
frame by frame,
frame being like, oh, and you can see the exact moment his heart breaks. You can see the exact moment that Wolverine has just created a second lifeblood feud with a Sabretooth. Because this thing has just seen his life partner not just taken.
It's like Chewbacca levels of bonding.
It is. Yeah. Imagine.
This is not a pet. This is a friend.
This is Han Solo deciding, hey, Chewie, stay on Tatooine. This Luke kid's going to be my second in command.
Also, he's going to ride my lap for some reason.
I feel like you have to just use Ben in that scenario as opposed to Luke because it's an older person. But that's the only change I would make. It's got to be Kenobi as opposed to Luke. All the rest, accurate.
Either way. Point is, I now believe that Wolverine is in the wrong in all of his blood feuds with Sabretooths because obviously he is the instigator.
And he also likes injecting himself into relationships that are already established.
Mojo messed up in Mojo Vision. He should have had Wolverine in his own little soap opera where like Sabretooth and then Zabu are roommates and like they...
No. He hasn't met Zabu yet. Don't go crazy, Rod.
But he was clearly watching this. It's on his TVs. He pointed at it. He's like, look, dinosaur show.
Yes, but Wolverine hasn't met the real-life saber-toothed tiger. Keep going, Rod.
Anyway, we're back at the dungeon. Sinister is just kind of taunting the X-Men.
Yeah, he has Cyclops in his clutches, and probably what my favorite quote was him basically shit-talking Cyclops. Your eyes can destroy it, but they cannot see. And it's just like, you're an idiot. That's literally the nice way of saying it.
And for some reason, Cyclops put his visor back on, maybe because Sinister hurt his feelings. I don't know.
I don't think we talked enough about this. I think we need to double back for a second. Cyclops' eyes. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a major thing. This is like Beast, not Blue.
Yeah.
Which he should also be. But Cyclops' eyes, we're seeing these for the first time. Yeah. Like, there's a lot happening here. We're going to get into some other stuff here once you lose the powers. But it is, I think, it starts to get really powerful here in the Savage Land where you're having these. And I do think it was a mistake to just get him on model after this scene. Because I think that, you keep him, hood down, visor off.
Which that's a great visual is when he has the hood down and stuff. And
exactly.
Yeah, it's not even like, because when he takes the visor off, there's still like the piece that's covering the back of his head. But when that's all down and you see it like, almost like the edge of a hoodie, like bunched up. It's a really like standout visual scene.
I still remember to this day, many decades since this original came out. 3 decades since this originally came out. That laugh is because I said many, and then John put up 3 fingers.
I wonder, somebody heard the correction, the unspoken correction.
It's not a correction. It was many decades. I was being poetic, and this show is not for the poets of us. So thankfully, Maya Angelou is no longer with us because she would have been a terrible guest on the show.
God damn it, Rod. Wally, continue.
The impact of seeing Cyclops, hood down, visor off, and real eyes, pupils and all, was impactful at the time, because you not just didn't see it, you knew that seeing it is an impossibility that is a tragedy for Cyclops. So having this moment, and I buy him not going crazy about it in this, because he's got to save Jean and the professor. Like it makes sense that he would not stop and be like, oh my god, I can see with clear eyes for the first time.
Is he British now?
Yeah, I figured this was like a Colin Firth kind of Cyclops. The Cyclops in X-Men animated always looked like
he's
Colin
having
Firth
a moment. Let him keep going.
Okay.
But I think it was a mistake of the show to just get him back on model as soon as they got him in, which I think makes sense from a tactical standpoint, because you don't know forever how long it's going to go, and your power is pretty dangerous the nanosecond it comes back on. But I think that you could have kept him out of it a little longer, even had a scene where Jean could see him without it and had a thing. Again, things we'll get to, they know the impact there. They do explore a little bit of it elsewhere. So I think that if they would have just pushed that further, it would have made an already, I think, very impactful episode, which apparently no one likes, which is new to me. This is new to me. I thought this was everyone's favorite episode.
It's a 7.8 and an 8.0, so it's not a bad episode. But apparently people fucking love Mojo.
Yeah, that's weird to me, the Mojo thing.
Weird. But point being, Cyclops should, like, that is a bigger thing. And I think that they played it with a couple characters. They ignored it with Beast entirely, and they halved it with Cyclops. And that's maybe my biggest like regret from this is, I don't know, we've got 42 minutes across 2 episodes to deal with a lot of story, but if they would have just leaned into that ever so slightly more, I think this would be 9+ and everyone's favorite thing. I think they just didn't go all the way on a very logical place that they were already living in.
It would have been a really sweet moment if while they were stuck in the cell for Jean to like realize she'd seen his eyes for the first time. Like that would have been really sweet.
Well, thanks for making us all depressed.
So fuck this episode. Disney, we will still take that check.
So anyway, Sinister goes on with his villain monologue and decides to tell them that he's going to try to combine all mutant powers and like redistribute them to everyone to like more advanced mutant powers. So he takes Magneto as the first test subject to use a machine to amplify Vertigo's powers in what he described an unpredictable way.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting because it wasn't just that he was going to make Vertigo's power stronger, but I also got the impression that it could mean sometimes it might give you new powers, sometimes it might fuck you up. Like it could go in a lot of different directions
or
with
give
that.
You a child's body.
Yes. Or a giant head if you're a child.
Brainchild origins confirmed.
When we gave both options.
The thing I always took from this was it's a expansion of power that doesn't necessarily have a linear path. So if you're taking from Magneto and giving to Vertigo, that doesn't mean Vertigo all of a sudden has Magneto powers. That doesn't mean Vertigo all of a sudden has new powers. It just means Vertigo's powers have expanded. Now, I think this, if we take it from the lens of modern X-Men perspective, I think this is probably something that would have been retconned into secondary mutations.
Yeah, with the Joss Whedon stories of Astonishing. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yep. So like this would have been, a precursor to the idea that, you can continue to evolve in your mutantness. And sometimes it's very linear, that you become more of your thing, like Iceman becomes more icy.
Yeah, he becomes an alpha.
Yeah, it's just like...
Sorry, he becomes an omega.
Yeah, literally the opposite.
Yep. Yep.
But it still resolves in ice stuff.
Yeah.
Or you have Emma Frost, who has the diamond thing, which has nothing to do with telepathic powers, and it's just a different kind of iteration of power. It still makes her stronger. And so I think that this is an early version of what becomes secondary mutation, which is really cool to see, like this kind of permutation starting to develop, because Mr. Sinister in the comics at this time was all about, so if Xavier is about we're a natural evolution that we should work together, and Magneto is we're a natural evolution that we should move beyond, Mr. Sinister was always about evolution is a slow process. It can be perfected.
Let's fuck with this and have fun.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I failed chemistry. Nothing makes sense. Like, here's 2 poisons, table salt.
And I would mix 6 poisons and see how good the salt was.
There you go.
Speaking of poison, good Woodford Reserve, John.
Anyway, so Vertigo, it looks like she just gets like a higher level of the same power. Sinister has her try it on the X-Men, so she zaps them. They all seem to get like a little more nauseous. And you had some comments on like the way the waves work, like visually.
So in X-Men the animated series, Magneto has like when he goes for like generic power blast, it's like this weird yellow spiky kind of power blast from his hands.
Yeah, it's a yellow power blast that makes the frame rate on the animation drop.
That's a real power.
Yeah. And so the way they expressed this with Vertigo is instead of the circle lines that have been representative of her power up to this point in time, where it's like wavy and it kind of gives you a sense of
it was like bluish and
exactly,
stuff. Yeah.
It had a kind of like general multicolor light sparkly effect, which kind of matches the color palette of Vertigo. This is now like, it's not exclusively Magneto because they do this for every generic power blast for everybody, but it is that same kind of generic power blast, but now it is colored in a sort of multicolored kind of vaguely Vertigo-y kind of color scheme, which is cool to see because it's a conscious decision to differentiate the power. Except for the very next scene, it's back to those circles, which kind of bummed me out. But it's still cool to see them trying to express the very convoluted idea of unpredictable power expansion.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Wolverine and ka-zar arrive on their leather chicken, and Rogue is scared at that moment because she just saw what happened to Magneto.
So this moment here, and this is the biggest reason why I wanted to come be on this episode, because for me, X-Men the Animated Series, one of the most important things in my life in terms of watching, and a big reason for that, beyond exposing me to this world and all that stuff, when I believe I was 8 or 9 or something when this episode came out, I remember sitting in my apartment watching TV and being so thoroughly invested in this, because you have to understand, in the vacuum of the internet and everything else, when this show was just coming out, we've been getting these vignettes, these moments of the Savage Land stuff, and it's been building and building for the entire season. The entirety of this two-parter, if you were watching at that time, felt elevated, felt bigger than anything you had seen before. And then you start to get to these moments like this, where after Sinister has pulled some genetic material from Magneto, proved that this can not only work, but is deadly potentially to the people that he's putting this on. We are now exposed to a moment, and there's this dramatic music change where it kind of becomes this emotional swell, and Rogue is in Gambit's arms, and she expresses to him that she is scared because she doesn't know how to fight these guys like this. She's only ever known expressing brute strength and being the most powerful person in a room for years, according to this character. And we now have this moment where she has weakness for the first time. And she is in the arms of the person that she loves, Gambit, my favorite character, one of my biggest influences of the show. I love this character. I was born in New Orleans, so it immediately gave me this connection. And I love Gambit, and I love this romance with Rogue. And as a child, as an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, for the first time, I'm already in this elevated sense of excitement because we're getting this climax to something that I've been watching for 6 months unfold before me. And my favorite character, who has this impossible tragic love story with this woman who he can't touch because of her mutant power, she's now scared and in his arms, and his first thought isn't, I'm going to tell you it's okay, I'm not going to whatever, it's I'm going to stop everything and I'm going to express my love for you. I'm going to kiss you for the first time. And the music swells, and little child me is experiencing very weird emotions, not understanding why the hell this is affecting me the way that it is. And in reality, it's affecting me because I'm invested in these characters, and I believe the moat between them, their mutant powers.
The actual moat, not the fucking lake that you called a moat.
It could be a dinosaur lake, too.
The dinosaur lake of emotions between the two of them.
That's going to be the name of something.
No, it's not. Please keep going, Wally.
So as a child, I understand that. and I understand the concepts that are at play here. But to see it played out, and to see them have that moment, and to have her ripped away from him and put in a life-threatening situation, and he can't do anything about it, like it felt hopeless. And it gave me that emotional response that I haven't really had before. Like I've had experiences before this, but this was the first time that it could actually express what it is. And this was what cemented not just X-Men the animated series, but really the X-Men as an IP as a massively important one for my life from a creative standpoint. This taught me, this was the thing that taught me how art can affect you, and how there is a made up fantasy verse, but when done right, can resonate with the real human watching on the other side. And I will always love and respect this show because it gave that to me, amongst all of the other amazing things that this show has and has given this world and will continue to give us in its continuation here next year. I just couldn't put into words at the time, and it's even, struggle to this day, the power that this had. And I'm grateful, and I appreciate the show for having this, and I appreciate you guys for allowing me on this show to express that about this episode and what this show means to me.
So in the only way to follow up on that incredibly heartfelt thought, Rod transitioned into Wolverine attacking.
ka-zar and Wolverine sneak in. They split because ka-zar is going to go free his people, and Wolverine is going to go presumably free the X-Men. We haven't decided yet.
Pretty sure that was his goal. Yes, Rod.
Rogue is getting chained up while Wolverine arrives, and so big fight ensues. Then we cut back to ka-zar. He sees his wife and his people in like a dungeon thing, and she sees him. So she immediately starts flirting with the guard so that ka-zar can take out the guard to free them. We quickly cut back to the lab. Vertigo zapping Wolverine, and the Savage Land people arrive, and they start to attack, but then immediately get blasted off a cliff.
It's even better than that.
Yeah.
They start to attack. Brainchild
shuts the door.
Like waddles to the door, shuts it, and they're like, okay. And then later when they're trying to desperately escape, they reopen that same door. They're all still there. Just standing there waiting for something to happen.
Super awkward. It's great. So as that is happening, the fight breaks out. Wolverine cuts Morph and Xavier free. They then basically just do what every piece of technology is affected by. Throw something at it or break it. And magically they cut one of the bio vines.
It's this great moment where Xavier says, we have to destroy the machine. And so he throws a chair at it, and Morph...
Which is really ironic that Xavier, of all people, is throwing a chair.
It is. And I didn't think about it, so right now you're right. But then Morph, upon hearing, we have to destroy the machine, chops off one of the biological, limbs or...
Biovine.
Yeah.
Biovines. Yep. Which, I'm sorry, I didn't know that was a part of the machine. I thought that was just part of the Citadel. Apparently,
it's both.
It's both. So,
Sinister's team is very fucking efficient.
Yeah, it's so efficient that a tossed chair and one biovine slice immediately broke.
I didn't say they were good. I just said they were efficient.
So it breaks the power inhibitor, and Xavier, the first thing happens is Xavier falls because his legs glow and they stop working.
Which, here's the only thing I want to say. They put so much emphasis on the belts as the way everybody is protected, and then they just destroy the machine. So the belts were just like this weird MacGuffin of can't fuck with the belts, or otherwise, they're going to lose their powers too. They went the other way of just no, we're storing everything.
Yeah, and everybody starts getting their powers back.
Except for Beast, which had no change.
So this is what the best part about all of this. So, yes, as soon as it is destroyed, Xavier's legs glow, and then you start seeing other X-Men who are also glowing in areas that make sense for them. So, Jean has a little glow on her forehead, Cyclops in the visors.
Gambit's crotch.
There is glowing happening in all of the most relevant places for the X-Men. The only X-Men that does not get shown to have a single glow is Beast. Beast, the blue furry muscle man who, upon arriving here, and when all of his mutant powers should have been lost, Nothing changed.
Yeah.
He was equally as big and blue and furry. He broke things. He acrobated things. We saw no clumsiness or anything. It's just Beast.
Yeah.
Maybe he's dumber. Maybe he doesn't know Dakar. And he's like, let's talk about macaroni and cheese. Like, I don't know. We didn't get any expression
He starts
of
going into like a flat Earth monologue.
yeah, we didn't get any expression of the Beast losing his powers, and then as if to acknowledge that there was no way to show he could lose his powers, they also didn't give him any blue glowiness.
Because he didn't lose anything.
So for me, that guaranteed and confirmed the headcanon that Beast is not a mutant.
He was just mistaken.
He was just an athletically gifted dude with big feet that accidentally got lumped in with the X-Men and then drank some bad potion that turned him into the blue furry man. But I think X-Men the animated series is trying to tell us, trying to whistleblow that Hank McCoy is a fraud.
Let it be. You heard it here first. Or last, because this is a month later.
Throw him back in jail. I am pro Graydon Creed and the Friends of Humanity. That man does not deserve to walk the streets.
So it's a pretty one-sided fight when everybody, Beast excluded, gets their powers back. Vertigo looks like she's about to attack. Magneto literally just like encases her head in metal. And I'm like, is he just going to crush her skull? Because that's pretty cool.
I think he killed her.
He didn't kill her.
That seemed pretty brutal, but okay.
I'm just saying, if you have a character named Vertigo, it would have been really cool if she was attacked by birds or a psycho.
Oh.
So Sinister takes a cheap shot, shoots Magneto from behind.
Cyclops takes out Sinister.
Yeah, Cyclops does take out. You're hosting the episode. I'm filling in gaps in silence, Rod. Keep going.
Cyclops takes out Sinister. Sinister does something to the thing he installed in Morph's head to hurt him and then start controlling him. And then Cyclops and Sinister have like the dueling beams.
Yeah, they have the energy blast battle.
It's basically a precursor to Dumbledore Voldemort battle from Order of the Phoenix.
No, let's use something that doesn't suck.
Isn't that a Dragon Ball thing? The beam?
You're worse than I am.
I don't watch Dragon Ball, I just seen it.
It is basically a precursor to the Dumbledore Voldemort battle from Order of the Phoenix, where two energy blasts meet in the middle and go all gobbledygook.
Yes, it's the Dragon Ball Z shit.
And then Morph like steals a blaster. He shoots Professor Xavier first.
In the shoulder,
Yeah.
burning a hole through his thing. Like, it looked like a wound.
And then Professor Xavier uses his telepathy to speak to Morph through his head and gives him the big Fast and Furious speech.
I was just going to say that. Like, they talk about family in this show more than the entirety of the Fast and Furious franchise.
And then Ludacris takes a...
Nope, don't you start.
I'm just going to say, I think it is a failure on our part that earlier when we were talking about Xavier getting the Sauron kind of like mind control, the way they expressed it is Xavier's face and then like a 50% opacity like headshot of every X-Man like flipping through. Like Xavier, it wasn't win or lose, it was all about the family. Like that's what he saw that and he was excited or he was...
I mean, he might have been excited.
he saw that in his head, and he was moved to not be quite as mind controlled by it.
So the Dragon Ball Z battle is happening, and Morph listens to the Fast and Furious speech and shoots Sinister. So when that happens, Sinister explodes into a puddle of goo because Cyclops' optic blast is able to overtake him.
Cyclops has this amazing ability to just push things with his eyes. That's basically what the optic blasts are. They're just force going outwards. But what we've been able to do with this show is showcase why Mr. Sinister wants Cyclops and Jean, not just because of their powers, but because of the strength of their powers. And to show that, you don't need to show much for Jean Grey because you understand telepathy and you understand the legacy of that character. And then eventually we see the Phoenix power being expressed. So you understand the potential within her. But there isn't the same kind of thing you can do with Cyclops in this show. In the comics, obviously, you have all this history to go into. So to do this in the show, they made the really intelligent decision that basically the optic blasts of Cyclops are the only thing that permanently hurt him. And that is really interesting to express. And that's why you get this kind of final battle scene. Because, I mean, we've seen Wolverine slice him, and we've seen all these other stuff, and it's been nothing. But with Cyclops, it's a concussive, continuous injury to a seemingly immortal character, and that gives you this underlying context of the power that Mr. Sinister wants and why he creates it, why he's always going after Jean and Scott. I just thought there was a really cool way to kind of show and express that, especially now kind of looking back at it, where you understand what they were trying to do from what's going on in the comics and in the legacy of the Summers Bloodline and what that means to a Mr. Sinister in that context and what you don't get in the future context.
So Brainchild, it's like freaking out, so he starts gathering the pieces and stuff, and while he's doing that,
Jean just says, nope.
Yeah, because Sinister's actually starting to reform a little bit, so Jean like throws the pieces up in the air and explodes them even more, and then that's kind of just that. Then we cut.
But it continues the tradition of the X-Men not worrying about future repercussions of any of their villains. So they let a lot of people go. They let a lot of people walk off. We're just going to spread you out into the air, but we know you're going to reconstitute.
Yeah, and you'll come back. Sauron sets the self-destruct mode, so the whole place starts exploding. The X-Men escape with Magneto's help.
And the Sinister ship flies off, so we have to assume that the Nasty Boys hopped on there. And yeah, Gorgeous George, new leader.
Yeah. And the people of Savage Land, we cut to sometime in the future, presumably
like 20 minutes later, probably.
Well, they're rebuilding everything, so they're fast built. Rome was built in a day in this case. And
that was not Rome, Rod. I don't know what you think Rome looked like, but that was not Rome.
I don't know, it was a bunch of white people. So they take Morph back on the Blackbird on a stretcher, and Magneto and Professor Xavier have this last conversation before they depart. Magneto's like, still disagree with you. We're going to fight another day, but...
Well, it comes from Xavier extending the invite to join the X-Men. And, correct me if I'm wrong, at that point in the comic, Magneto had been a member of the team. So... when he thought he was a different person.
Yes.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, years prior, he had been a part of the team.
In the 80s, yeah.
Yeah, in a version. But also concurrent to this, if you're a...
Jim Lee era.
Yeah, so this is not that far away from, in terms of the comics, where Magneto is leading the X-Men in the absence of an Xavier in that timeline. So what this is playing on is this tenuous line between Xavier and Magneto in terms of whose side can one be on. But this is also from a comic standpoint after he had gone much further into the enemy territory with like Fatal Attractions and the X-Men, adjectiveless X-Men, where he came back, the whole sort of New Mutant Genesis kind of stuff. So this was a really cool, if you were a fan of the X-Men at the time, just sort of like reinforcement of the idea that these are friends. These are guys that are on similar, adjacent, parallel, but different paths, and anything can either bring them closer together or bring them farther apart. And in the comics, they were at a pretty far apart place, but were about to come together again. And in the animated series, it just really shifted Magneto away from series big bad, which he was in season 1, to a benevolent's the wrong word.
Yeah, a little more of like a neutral ground, because he responds, we each have our own destiny, and the future is going to prove which of us is right. And Xavier sees him off by calling him my friend. So it is now two people who are not at each other's throats anymore, but still cannot agree on ideology.
And they might get in each other's way in the future, or
right.
They will.
and they will a couple times, but also there will be a couple times of connection too. Mm-hmm. There's going to be later episodes where Magneto helps. There's going to be later episodes where Magneto's the villain. And then it ultimately ends where it ends. If you listen to every episode of this podcast, I'm not going to spoil it now.
So then the Blackbird leaves with the X-Men and injured Morph. Magneto goes his own way. Sauron looks over all this and says, now that all the tourists are gone, basically,
all of the Outlanders have left the Savage Land.
The Savage Land's true future begins, and then the camera in an animated show pans down onto the shore,
and it's supposed to be Mr. Sinister's face materializing in the sand and cackling as you leave the season.
Yeah.
But basically what happens is it pans down and there's a bunch of shards of stuff, and those come together into a dotted outline of Mr. Sinister's face. And he cackles. I want to clown this a lot, but I'm going to be completely honest. As a kid, this was terrifying. to know that he's still out there. Like the show does not even begin to pretend he's dead, but to know that he is like the particles of him are still present in the area, and he's going to start coming together. This is the kind of villain action that starts to lead into what we're going to start getting in the next couple seasons. The Phoenix, which is this massive force. There's going to be some great apocalypse stuff coming down. There's going to be some more sinister stuff happening. And it's really showing that while this was very difficult for the X-Men to get through, we haven't even begun to express the power that's going to be thrown at these characters over the next 2 seasons.
Because this is the second time Sinister's been like the end of season stinger.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Thank you for taking my note, Rod. No. It's fine. I didn't tell Rod I was going to say that.
And then third, if you count the New Mutants.
I don't.
I said that wrong. Or third, if you count X-Men Apocalypse.
I don't.
I did it wrong again. Or third, if you count X-Men Dark Phoenix.
Stop it.
I'm sorry, that was the one that he actually showed up in the
No, it's fine. We're keeping all of it.
I think I found my TikTok clip, though.
Yeah, I also think we have 2 episodes out of this. So.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, oddly enough, so there are all these great like fandom pages and fan wikis and stuff like that. The only reference for both episodes, aside from like first appearance of Lupa, which had obviously a huge impact on Wally, is Brainchild is apparently a reference to the movie Hands of Fate from 1966.
I'm not
How do you pronounce it? A satyr or satyr?
Satyr,
yeah, named Torgo.
Oh my God. Wow. I didn't even put that connection, but you said that.
I said that because somebody on IMDb said that.
I will confirm that person on IMDb was accurate, because now that you have put that connection in my head, that's actually really good.
It'd be great if, like, a few episodes from now, we find out that it was Drunk Wally that added that to IMDb.
It's future Wally.
Ooh, Interstellar. Whoa, we got a Nolan film now?
Future Drunk Wally. All right, so we do have one thing that we are going to discuss about that could still be considered spoilers for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. So before we do that, just in case somebody does want to tune out right before that starts, Wally, anything that you want to share before people leave, and then we'll talk multiverse for a second?
Just thank you guys for having me on this conversation. I have enjoyed listening to many episodes of this podcast up to this point.
You've obviously not listened to the right episodes.
I obviously haven't listened to all of them, so this has all been a big spoiler for me. Once I get to it, I will have known it, and I will probably get very upset. But the biggest thing is, like, this show was instrumental for me and for a lot of people, and I'm just really excited that we live in a world where it is on a pedestal of equal measure to its peers, like Batman the Animated Series, which has forever been recognized for its import to animation and to pop culture at the time, and that we can live in a world where X-Men the Animated Series gets its due alongside that is fantastic. And all of this gearing up to the revival series has me through the roof excited, and thank you guys, Rod and John, for allowing me to come on here and share my perspective on what for me was the biggest, most impactful set of episodes on this show, amongst the many that are massively important. And so if you are, a fan of this show or have been just a fan of the X-Men in general, for me, I'm just thrilled that we have an opportunity to revel in what this show specifically was. Bad animation, to be damned. It's still an amazing, fun ride, and thank you guys for giving me the chance to revisit it with you.
Well, don't worry, because after we're done recording this episode with you, we're recording the first episode of season 3, and that's where the bad animation kicks in. So,
sweet.
Yep.
We're not on the last season yet, so you still have some ways to go until you get to the bottom.
I know, even the cover of the DVDs, it changes dramatically. Cool. So we are going to move into Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness spoiler territory. You have been warned. It's not going to be long, but thank you guys who want to tune out. And I will actually turn it over to Wally and Rod, because I watched Multiverse of Madness at the Chinese theater, which was so loud that I didn't even hear the music sting that happened when Professor Xavier popped on screen.
So the reason I wanted to talk about this at the very end, and thank you guys for this little corner that we get to inhabit here, but there is, for the first time ever, direct reference to the animated series in the Marvel MCU. And we know that there's going to be continuing references because we have this X-Men 97 continuation series coming down the pipe, but
which is specifically labeled as Marvel Studios. That's the big connective tissue.
And we get a Professor Xavier, Patrick Stewart Professor Xavier, the only man that has inhabited this role in live action that matters. And we see him, yellow hover chair, green suit, circular powers expressed visually, and a moment where he puts one hand on his forehead and the other hand points at the thing, like the perfect expression of the powers that were made popular by X-Men the Animated Series. And as he came onto the screen for the first time, they played a tiny sting of the X-Men theme.
Yeah, they played the first two like kind of lines of the motifs, like
da-na-na-na-na. Da-na-na-na. The same kind of like connective tissue that you actually hear in an episode of X-Men Evolution, where someone in season 1, the episode's over, and then they're like at a pool party or something for like the coda, and there's a tiny little sting in there that was just an Easter egg at the time.
Watch that show.
Watch X-Men Evolution. X-Men Evolution is great.
We're going to get there once we get through this entire animated series.
For all the greatness of X-Men the Animated Series, I desperately want some of the elements of Evolution to enter into the live action as well. But we can get there, and I respectfully reserve my right on that second series as well.
That moment, it was cool because it was everything he wanted. It's kind of like in that really shitty Power Rangers update a few years ago. The only redeemable thing was when the Megazords came together, we heard the original theme song. And it was the same composer, Ron Wasserman, who also composed the theme with me for this podcast.
This show. Yes.
And it's like when you see the moment, that music, like you said, is so connective. It did all that emotionally and also kind of like softly confirmed that is at least an animated universe Xavier, you know?
Well, we had several animation things happening in Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
You have Captain Carter showing up in live action, who premiered in animation. Obviously not the same Captain Carter. You're expressing animation over the course of, or you're expressing universes over the course of multiple different iterations, and this is a live action iteration, and there's an animated bit as well. But you also had, during America and Doctor Strange's tumble through the multiverse, an animated universe that they went into. You also had a universe made of paint, which is also
where it's hard to eat.
Vaguely animation as well.
Which I just want to interject on the animation conversation. It very much, and Rod wasn't as familiar with it, felt to me like the MTV Spider-Man show from Neil Patrick Harris voicing Peter Parker. That was the cel-shaded style animation that I got the vibe from.
You're exactly right. It was clearly just footage that they put animation on top of. But the fact that the worlds of animation have been blurred, and this in the pinnacle part of it is this Charles Xavier in this moment with this musical sting as he came up, and just that demeanor. Like the best part of that Professor Xavier was after the Illuminati left, he was like, "Nah, I'm gonna help this guy."
Yeah,
because he even regurgitated some of the dialogue from Days of Future Past, which is also really fantastic about. You know, it was in his Hope conversation with the younger version of himself, how, you know, it's not about, you know, you stumble, but you still go, or I don't remember the specifics.
It's like someone can change.
Yes, and he used that
all
moment.
the screenings I was at, people like applauded for that line. Yeah.
It's the epitome of who the Xavier character is, and all of it starts with that animated iteration. And yeah, it has its history in all the other stuff before, but if it wasn't for the animated series, that's not how they would have expressed peak fan Xavier. Yeah. It would have been a different thing. Honestly, it probably would have been Weird X helmet from the current stuff.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for X-Men the Animated Series. And I love that it has that much of an indelible line, and I love that the music sting was labeled as X-Men 97 in the credits.
Thing. Yeah, because I looked up the credits. I saw the credits after we were all waiting for that Bruce.
And to be fair, Rod has seen the movie now 3 times in the opening weekend.
Okay, but this wasn't because I'm like such a huge fan. It was a fun movie.
Stop giving excuses. You saw it.
I'm going to buy it. I just overcommitted because I haven't had experience event planning for myself in 2 years. So anyway, but yeah, I noticed. So interesting. This is not official. I don't actually, even though I've worked with Ron, I don't know anything officially. The implications of it being labeled 97 instead of just X-Men theme from before, most probably means that either that's the specific Master Sonic recording that will be X-Men 97, or there's some legal issue that they like filed something as, stuff. And that's just from like a music publishing standpoint stuff. It could be just as easy as like it's a marketing move and they just wanted to plug it in there. I don't know.
They added that little bitty ting.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
And as soon as I left the theater from the very first time I saw it, I texted Ron and I was like, hey, you're going to want to watch the new Doctor Strange movie. And he was like, I'm probably going to wait for it to go on streaming. Cool. Well, whenever you are comfortable and stuff, it's like, this is probably already saying too much, but your legacy lives on. And he was like, oh shit, really? And anybody that doesn't know why that may have been surprising to him is like, he was doing a work for hire thing back when he was working on all his music and stuff. So on paper, all the writing credit went to Haim Saban and Shuki Levy. So they're the ones, and their company signs off on that stuff. So anytime Power Rangers or X-Men or anything music gets used, Ron doesn't need to be notified. And Saban, it feels like he goes out of his way to make sure he doesn't know. Because if you watch one of our KBC videos where we interviewed Ron about the Power Rangers theme, he was not informed or even invited to the premiere of the movie, even though his music was used in it.
So my thought is it's probably labeled as such because it is literally from the show. Like, I think that what probably happened in the Marvel Studios is they were like, we're going to do this. And because they were working on X-Men 97 at the time, they were like, okay, well, whoever's doing the music there. I didn't catch the names underneath who was listed under that credit on the thing, so I don't know if that will reveal anything.
It didn't have performer credits from what I remember looking at it. And also I did get the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness soundtrack, and that is not on the soundtrack. No. So,
no, I mean, it was a sting. It wasn't even a full song. So,
but sometimes they include that in suites and stuff. So.
Because there's at the end of the day, it's there.
Yeah,
it's connecting to the animated series. It makes the legacy of what that was a part of what is, and because it's labeled the way it is, it also looks to the future. And that was amongst my most thrilling parts of watching really Doctor Strange, because I have that emotional connection to what that was. And so to have that expressed there, to see an Xavier moving on a screen with that music sting in a movie theater in 2022, it is a literal impossibility that has come true.
Yeah.
And that's what I love so much about the MCU, is so much of the amazing things that happen in these movies are things that shouldn't happen in movies.
But I think you're right, because of all the evidence we've had, is that I think that it's actually the actual Sonic audio from the series that we heard. This is our first glimpse into X-Men 97 stuff. So this was a long one. Thank you for listening to both parts of this.
This is definitely two parts.
We weren't sure when we started recording this would be one or two parts, but it's definitely two parts. So you've listened to Wally for 2 weeks now, which was my experience all through lockdown for VidCon. I just kept getting notifications of Wally was talking in Discord. Every week. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them in the comments for either the YouTube upload or official Instagram post about this episode, or posts now. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app if you're choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and CastBox.
By the end of our second season, I would have thought we would have had an outro, but here we are.
Dinosaur Lake.
No, god damn it, Rod.
It's not a moat.